I'm not entirely who. I can't necessarily put my finger on the person because, if I'm being honest, I don't really know anyone that's inside Bernie Sanders' camp. However, I think, I think there is some sandal-clad person at one of Bernie Sanders' meetings that watches the show. And in watching the show, they saw me shaking and wailing and flailing about, making the point that you gotta hit Biden in his mass, meaning his mass of support is coming from African Americans, is coming from the elderly, and it's coming from people who just think he's more electable. When you look at the polling, it makes that clear. For example, Sanders has been increasing his margins in regards to the polling. And I continuously make the point that what's more important than the polling itself are the trends. What are the trends telling you? Who are the people that like X? Who are the people who hate Y? Who are the people who are going to bleed on the flag in order to go and place a vote for this particular person or that particular person? Attacking Biden, saying that Biden doesn't like kids, doesn't really do it because those kids aren't voting for Joe Biden anyway. The people who are voting for Joe Biden, again, are African Americans, the elderly, and people who think he is more electable. The issue here is you got to pry away points from one of those demographics. Take a look at this. This is Morning Consult. One of the trends, Sanders gets the youth vote. Sanders gets the Hispanic vote. Warren is collapsing polling-wise. I mean, this is her line right here. Boom, bottoming out. This is Sanders going up. This is Biden trending down. Now, the catch here, though, is Biden, for the most part, has been able to maintain that spot. Take a look at this. Biden, 31. Sanders, 23. Now, this is national polling. National polling lies. Why do I say that? National polling lies because ultimately the polling is always taking place in states. State after state after state as a candidate slog through one state after the next, going all across this country, giving the people a vote, giving them their choice. Yay or nay. This guy or that guy. Or that woman. My point is, though, whatever the national polling is, what matters most is the states. You can have a situation, especially in Joe Biden's case, especially on this notion of electability, it is a fickle mistress. The moment that you ask people, who do you think is more trusted on healthcare? Sanders. Who do you think is more trusted on environment? Sanders. Who do you think is more trusted on immigration? You get this kind of Sanders and Biden thing. Who do you think is more trusted on the economy? Again, you get Sanders or Biden. Then you get to this notion of electability. And Biden, 20 points. He's considered safe. Now, my argument has been you have to hit him in the areas where he has strength, because those are the areas where you need to peel away support. One of those areas is this notion of electability. I don't think Biden is more electable. I think people think he is, in the same way they thought Hillary Clinton was inevitable. They find those people in their bubbles, and all of them, they agree. You have a lot of African Americans who, especially elderly, want to maintain the Obama legacy. And they also look at Biden as the person who can be sold to the rest of the public. They've seen him forever. The people who are around him, know him, are familiar with him. And they think this is the person that's necessary to sell to the rest of the nation. And we'll be content with him. Now, the catch here is the moment that it seems like Biden is not more electable. Meaning, the moment that you could find a candidate that is equally electable, especially if he loses. Meaning, if Biden starts losing those states, if he loses the first 3 states, this notion of electability gets a little bit dodgy. And when you have somebody else that has better ideas than electability, and that electability is not giving you those 10, 15 points, that candidate starts to crumble. Got to hit Biden's electability. You got to make the argument. You got to make that argument stick. Not just on the Iraq war vote. You got to do it across the board. And you can't be sheepish about it, even on the debate stage. Your job in this is to win. And part of that in winning is to make your case to the American public of why you is better than the other person, especially the weaknesses and the flaws of that other individual. If that candidate has a glass jaw, you're supposed to find out in the primaries. That's why primaries are supposed to be competitive. Electability is a fickle mistress. And I strongly suspect that Biden has somewhat of a glass jaw on this. I could be wrong. Biden could limp his way through state after state after state and make it over the line. It's possible. But Sanders has finally taken my lead and has gone out and has started to hit Joe Biden and some of the sharpest rhetoric that I've heard on this campaign trail from the standpoint of Sanders against Joe Biden on that notion of electability. Squarely hitting him in his mass. That sounds funny, that sounds weird, but I'm making the point that the mass of support that Joe Biden has is on this notion of electability. You need several points from that. Even if it's 10 points, even if it's 5 points, it's better in your pocket than his. In fact, of the matter is making the other arguments that are almost ancillary to that is not giving you the bang for your buck. I suspect that I'm not the only one that has recognized that, considering this trend for the most part. And yes, that's a national. These are just Super Tuesday posts. Much, much closer. I can go through the other political page that is Sanders, again, relatively consistent, first, second, or third. This is Emerson, New Mexico, Sanders in the number one spot. And if we jump to a polling thing, same thing. This is Super Tuesday Morning Consult. Sanders up 2. I guess my point is, in the various polls, Sanders has had an upward trajectory. However, Biden, for the most part, has still been able to maintain. And this attack seems to be slightly different than what he was hitting with before, but at the very least, electability has now ended up on Sanders' radar. You're welcome, Sanders. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support. PayPal, Patron. That intro went long. I started thinking about something else in the middle of the intro, so I will have to cut a part of that. Nevertheless, I appreciate Sanders going after him on this very specific point because I do think this is a vulnerability. It has to be a vulnerability, right? Biden, even in his arguments, he understood the policy wasn't the issue. If you remember early on, Biden wasn't putting out a climate plan or anything else. For the most part, Biden was just in the race because what he understood was policy wasn't the main thing for him. The main thing for him is, I'm Joe Biden. I was vice president with Obama. You know me. I'm Joe Biden. And that was enough. His wife even comes out and makes the argument of, you may not like all of Joe's policies, but he can beat Trump. His key selling point, oddly enough, is this notion that for whatever reason, he's the guy that can take down Trump. He's the safe bet. He's the guy that keeps the monsters at bay. Well, Sanders needs to make the argument of why he's not the guy who can keep the monsters at bay, but why he, Bernie Sanders, is. And he's making that argument on CNN.
Obviously with Iowa and New Hampshire coming up. You said recently about Vice President Biden, his record, you said to the Washington Post, quote, it's just a lot of baggage that Joe takes into a campaign, which isn't going to create energy and excitement. Is there something specifically you were referring to in terms of baggage?
Sure. I mean, look, Joe and I are friends, and I truly like Joe. But what is imperative is that we defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in modern history. And that means you're going to have a huge voter turnout. You're going to have to get working people excited. You're going to have to get young people excited. Joe Biden voted and helped lead the effort for the war in Iraq, the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in the modern history of this country. Joe Biden voted for the disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China, which cost us millions of jobs. You think that's going to play well in Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania? You know, Joe Biden has been on the floor of the Senate talking about the need to cut Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. Joe Biden.
Why didn't you say this on the debate stage? This is so infuriating about fucking Bernie Sanders. I've been on this channel and I made the argument that part of his mass is the elderly vote. You need to hit him in that. Part of his mass is the black vote. You need to hit him in that. You can go back and look at that video. I made the point that Joe Biden was out there saying he agreed with Paul Ryan and you need to cut Social Security. And if part of his mass is the elderly vote, be it because for whatever reason they know Joe and they trust him a little bit more than somebody like Sanders who they consider to be risky, what they will not like is hearing that one of the candidates, that candidate being Joe Biden, was trying to cut Social Security or entitlements, as they might call it. Why don't you say it on a debate stage? I hope you get my point. Like, yes, it's good that you say this on CNN, but why not on stage with him in front of an American audience making that point? Now, it's very possible that this is a creeping strategy of sorts, meaning kind of like in war, like in World War II, they would have the attacks, and the attacks would be in waves. It wasn't always just kind of one assault. It was multiple assaults, meaning there were multiple iterations of particular strategies that are being implemented over the course of a campaign. And at one part of the campaign, you may take a certain tact. At another part of the campaign, as you get closer to Iowa and you want the public to be more focused on it, you take a different attack. Meaning, early on, what he's willing to say about Joe Biden is limited. The closer you get to Iowa, where more people are paying attention to it, the rhetoric sharpens. And it sharpens in a way where the strategy tilts into this notion of electability. Now, whether they looked at this in the beginning early on and say, okay, Joe Biden's main strength of his electability, or whether they did this kind of on the fly of saying, okay, we need to shift tactics, or we need to shift strategy and hit him on this very particular point. Something has changed. Whether they pre-planned it or whether they did it, meaning whether this is impromptu or whether this is kind of pre-planned, it is something that is taking place that is somewhat of a shift in the rhetoric that the Sanders campaign is taking. I would be really interested for somebody to ask them, did you plan this? Meaning, did you look at this and say, the closer we get to Iowa, we need to change strategy, and there are certain attacks that are going to be that much more pertinent to us. And those attacks need to be delivered when most people are paying attention to them, the closer we get to the states. Oh, God, I would love somebody to ask them that. Nobody's going to ask them that. Let him continue.
Pushed a bankruptcy bill, which has caused enormous financial problems for working families. So if we're going to beat Trump, we need turnout. And to get turnout, you need energy and excitement. And I just don't think that that kind of record is going to bring forth the energy that we need to defeat Trump.
Senator Elizabeth Warren was asked by Jake Tapper yesterday why she believes her Medicare for all.
A bankruptcy bill. You know, Joe Biden voted to get young people excited. But what is imperative is that we defeat
a lot of baggage that Joe
on an endless war.
I was looking for a clip. He has a thing at the bottom saying that Joe Biden's record is so weak. He's like, this rhetoric has sharpened tremendously. It's sharpened tremendously. Right here. And the line is this one. Citing unsavory, let's see. Electability case is all cracked, right. He's launched an attack, right. Citing unsavory aspects, including a previous support for the Iraq War, Sanders told Anderson Cooper Monday that Biden couldn't inspire the huge voter turnout it would take to defeat Trump. I just don't think that kind of record is going to bring forth the energy needed to defeat Trump, said. Echoed comments he made to Iowa and Washington Post last week. It's just a lot of baggage that Joe takes in the campaign, which isn't going to create energy and excitement, Sanders said at the time. He brings into the campaign a record so weak that it cannot create excitement and energy. Jesus Christ. Yeah, his campaign has taken a very specific tone. Because again, this is not just with Anderson Cooper. This is in Iowa, this is with the Washington Post, and now this is on CNN. Now the catch becomes, does he say this on the debate stage? Meaning, if this is what he's starting up with, meaning his campaign has taken a very specific tone of, we are more electable. Joe Biden has a lot of baggage. Joe Biden he doesn't go as far as say lose to Trump, but he does make the point that he will have a hard time beating Trump. At one point, he even say Trump will eat Joe Biden's lunch. So, this is not just a one-off. This is the campaign making a very specific tack to attack Joe Biden on this very specific issue of electability. Now, you only need to peel a few points away from Joe Biden on this notion of electability. And again, electability is a fickle mistress. It's, I believe this person can beat Trump. Well, what does that get you? Do you know what the public and what the world looks like? No, you don't. You, just like everyone else, has this kind of just hazy idea. You never actually touch the world. You never actually interact with the world. It's just kind of this thing that's out there that you have this thought about. And based on that thought, you say, who beats who? Now, you can use polling to back that up and everything else. You can try to use numbers and metrics and everything else. But at the end of the day, those things are just people making certain guesses and estimates, using certain metrics in order to weigh things. It's a different reading in regards to when those guys go out and make a vote. Yes, it could match the polling. By the same token, the polling could be wildly off in regards to what that is. Ultimately, out there remains hazy. The electability thing is often just the people who you bump around, how they think, which is similar to how you think, and that's your estimate of the world. This is the attack. And I believe he should have, this is correct to hit him on this notion, essentially, especially if you earnestly believe that Joe Biden is dragging a lot of baggage into the race. And I honestly do. Fact of the matter is, the Iran thing weakens Trump. If Trump's argument was, I'm the guy that keeps us out of war, and he's doing this with Iran, well, that undercuts his particular argument on, I'm the guy who's pulling us out of Syria and Afghanistan. No, you're the guy that's getting us more invested into the Middle East, potentially in regards to a war. That at this point it's gone to this kind of quid pro quo thing where they respond, you respond, which slowly and continuously, but inevitably, escalates into full-blown conflict that has, I gotta be honest, unpredictable consequences. It is unclear what China does. It's unclear what Russia does. It is unclear what Europe does. The UK will most likely stay with the United States, but Germany will probably have no penchant for this. France might probably have no penchant for this, especially since Europe has been closer to Russia. This is unpredictable. Trump doesn't know what he's doing on this, and this can drag us into a much, much larger conflict. Nevertheless, first things first, got to take down Biden. And he's starting his rhetoric to do so. Does Bernie Sanders do this in the debates? I think that answer is probably yes. I think it's probably yes. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.